one of the things I wanted to ask you was, as kind of a headhunter, do you consider yourself like a headhunter or like a recruiter? Or is it one of the same thing?
To me, they kind of are a little bit different, but I always go by what people know. I would like to think of myself as a headhunter, because most of the work that we do, we're going out there specifically to look for people and match them up with a role. Yeah, I'd go with headhunter, but not everybody always knows what a headhunter is.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So a headhunter, what is kind of your experience with people who change careers? Do you see that happening often? Is that like a common thing? And have things maybe changed recently? Has there been an increase or kind of decrease?
I know specifically in market research, people have talked a lot about how since COVID there was a big effect, and I think it was just people taking stock in general on what they're enjoying in life, what they're not enjoying in life, and really wanting to pursue what it is that's important to them. So I've definitely seen it from that perspective of people trying to leave market research. But in general, you do often see people, whether that's in like academia, wanting to transition into something that's a little bit more commercial, or people just are always looking for a change of pace in some way or another. And I would say there's been a lot of transitions from different types of research, so from like market research to UX. I know somebody that has left industry to become a psychotherapist, and she's currently retraining. Or people like to, take their skills and maybe into something that's slightly more on a tangent or a bit more different. So like going from a research role to a commercial role, or maybe they enjoy working with clients, so they want to be a bit more client facing, they want to be a bit more technical, so they'll make little pivots. Sure.
Are there any kind of particular pivots that are, or you've seen to be more difficult to make? So maybe some transitions you see that one's always really hard versus some of the other ones feel more natural.
Yeah, I would say a big thing that you see across the board with all industries is people that work in consultancy that would like to work for a brand and work client side. I see that often, and that's something that we're constantly counselling people on, and when to do it, when is the best time, what type of business will you go into. If you work in like the media side, there might be like a particular beauty brand or food retailer that you've always wanted to work with. If it's in research, there might be a type of research that you want to do, or like Lego is always a fun brand people want to work for because they're quite creative. So that's definitely something that you see a lot. But otherwise it will tend to be people either wanting to upskill themselves in more of a technical role, I find these days. And that's something that people are always looking to do a bit more of. Stay ahead of the AI curve, I guess.
Are there any areas currently, obviously now there's so many layoffs, the market's crazy, and what I keep hearing from people that it's just really, really difficult to get a job pretty much anywhere. Are there any areas where you feel have not been so much affected, so they're kind of stayed roughly the same, versus some of the areas, maybe tech, have just had like massive layoffs? And obviously considering this is UK, so things could look different worldwide, but what's your experience on that?
I would say, I think the legal tech sector and legal sector in general is maybe one of the only ones I know of that's completely kept its head above water. I would say even the most robust industries like healthcare, which have traditionally seemed to be like completely stable at all times, even they have pulled back a little bit. So I would say right now there probably isn't an industry that's affected. People thought finance was always something that's quite a safe bet, and again, I think the more areas that tech has touched and breached on, I think it's kind of had like a worldwide effect or like a nationwide effect for sure. I wouldn't say that there's any industry that's been completely unaffected. So with everything that's going on, so I think it makes it a lot harder to then go out there and kind of find the jobs that you're looking for. Do you know what I mean? You have to probably be a little bit more resilient, a little bit more persistent than you normally would, but there definitely still is hiring going on. I wouldn't say that people should see it as like an obstacle to stop them from doing it.
Are there particular roles that are kind of above all that's going on across different industries? So like a particular role that regardless of what's going on in that industry, it's still kind of up there, quite in demand?
I would actually say it's a really good question, because more than ever I've seen a massive demand for commercial roles. So I would say that's above any sector that you're in. When you get to a certain point in your sector, or you have a certain level of expertise and connections and network, your commercial skills are definitely something that are always in demand. And whether that's part and parcel of your day-to-day delivery role, or whether that is like the full focus of your role, having that commercial mindset and knowing that, okay, who I am is great and this is what I bring to the table, but also this is the value add that it will bring to the company, and being able to talk quite clearly on that is something that's completely in demand right now. Yeah, everybody wants someone who can either win new business, contribute to it, and basically help the commercial side keep going.
So when someone, I suppose, approaches you or you approach them, how do you work with them? Sort of what can someone maybe expect from working with you, what that relationship looks like, what are the dynamics? Just because I've never had experience, so I wonder if people also think like, oh, I've heard of headhunters. I don't really know how to get in touch. I don't know what that relationship should look like.
Yeah, I'd say it really depends. And again, a great question. It depends on the person. Most recruiters will like to work flexibly, and I think the whole point here is that we adapt to whatever it is that you need. Some people like working with them quite closely, and you'll probably like have a call maybe week to week or month to month and keep in touch with things that are changing. We're essentially a resource that you can use at your disposal for free at any point in your search. So I think the key thing is that a lot of people think you have to actively be looking for a new job, and that's when you speak to a recruiter. But I think the best way to utilize a recruiter is to work with them when you're not looking for a job. You're never wasting our time. You can ask us for salary insights. If you have an internal promotion,
That's incredible.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
Right?
I always felt even under pressure if someone reaches out to me. I'm like, I don't want to waste your time, even though I have questions. I'm not even going to talk to you because I'm just not in that point in my life. Yeah. Even though I might be curious about things and I might be considering a move like years down the line, I'll think, oh, I'll reach out then. Yeah. Actually, I never even thought of reaching out. I just sort of assumed people just are supposed to reach to you.
Yeah, 100%. And then you'll find when the market might be a little bit quieter, and if you're not getting as many messages in your inbox, that might be when people reach out and they're like, a recruiter hasn't pestered me in a while. Maybe I should see what's going on out there. Is there anything going on out there? But no, I think that's the biggest. It's never a waste of our time, and I feel like people always feel bad. Should never feel guilty, even if it's a no, and this isn't interesting for me right now, but what is interesting to you? We can do that work in the background. We can make a note and a log of that. And, you never know, maybe our dream role does come across the desk one day, and then we know who to speak to, who to reach out for, or even just to know not to bother you because you're in consultancy and you don't want to do a research role and you're trying to pivot towards something else, like this whole conversation is about, and then you can keep those kinds of things in mind. But I mean, you can expect salary insights from them. How, if you're looking to get to the next level where you're at, what kinds of skills, attributes, what is it that you need to be doing to help get you there? What are other people that you're aspiring to be like? What is it that they're doing? A recruiter will have those kinds of insights because they're constantly speaking to the market, whether that's speaking to junior level candidates or speaking to our own clients at the C-suite. We can get a really, really good read of a lot of those things. And then, hopefully they won't annoy you too much and spam you all the time. But if you set an expectation, then at least they can keep you up to date with relevant insights. And that way, when you are ready to make a move, it won't be because you've woken up and thought, oh, I need a new job today. It will be because you've done that work and you've done that progress of understanding, okay, what do I like? What do I not like? That's also equally as important. And you will have learned a little bit about what else is out there along the way, and you can kind of help filter that out for yourself as well. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's news to me. How would I then kind of maximize the benefits of that? I suppose, how many recruiters should I kind of reach out to? Is there like an ideal number of those? And would you recommend recruiters that are kind of very focused in a particular field, almost like specialist recruiters versus like more generalist recruiters? Does that even exist? I don't even know.
I know. Again, great question. I would say keep it fairly close circle when it comes to your recruiters. I probably wouldn't work with more than 2 to 3 at a time. And obviously if you get approached regularly, you can help filter that through. It can be hard to see who's a good recruiter and who's not. But I would say even from their own outreach, does it seem like they've sent you a tailored message? Does it seem like you have a lot of mutual connections? Because that means it'll be a good indication of how big their network is, how expert they are. I would tend to stick to specialists, whether that's a specialist direction you're already going in or would like to pivot towards, because they will be able to offer you the most tailored advice rather than it being generic.
Advice.
Because they'll know stuff about your competitors, they'll know stuff about the businesses that you want to work for. They might even know somebody who works at the business you want to work for, and maybe they can even connect you and introduce you, right? So
that's great,
right? It might not be the most direct step to your next role, but they'll be able to offer you something to help get you there, hopefully. And get you along the way. So yeah, I would say definitely reach out to a couple of recruiters. If you can build a relationship with 2 or 3, and then you'll cover the market well, you'll get the most out of them because you have that relationship. They'll remember you because you have that rapport. And try to be specialist if you can. A quick search on LinkedIn, on Google, through your own friends and colleagues. There'll always be somebody who can recommend, and that can go a long way as well. Yeah, I'm sure if someone searches through their LinkedIn inbox, they can find a few that have reached out a few times over the years.
Yeah, there's usually 1 or 2. For sure. And you're so right. Like, now that I'm looking back, there are some people who reach out with very tailored messages, and then there are others that are like, you just even wonder, like, did you even check my profile? Did you even read anything? Like, this is so random. Are there any other indicators that could indicate this person reaching out to me, or the person that I came across, that they're like, this might be a good person to connect with? I suppose especially if you're trying to pivot into a new area, so you don't have many mutual connections because maybe you've not yet built contacts in that new area. Any other telltale signs of who might be like a really good recruiter or headhunter?
If you're looking on LinkedIn, see if they're posting. If you're doing a Google search, you can see if like they're coming up higher up on the pages or on the what do you call it, like the SEO type stuff. Not always a big indicator, but I would say in the early stages of a search, especially when you're looking for a career transition, spread the net as wide as you can. And it might take a bit of work and a bit of time. You might find you're having a lot of similar conversations, but one of them will lead somewhere eventually, right? And it's a great starting point, I think, when you don't have any starting point, to just kind of keep having those conversations and trug along a little bit until you feel like you get that connection and that bond. But on the surface level, for sure, looking at their LinkedIn, looking at their connections, if you go on their website, you can see their job postings, what it is that they're doing. Are they posting a lot of the type of work you're interested in? Do they have any clients or creds that you think really align with you? That sort of thing. If there's somebody who has constantly reached out to you week after week with an untailored message and it's stuff that's not relevant to you, or maybe you've replied and they've not taken on your feedback, then maybe that's not the type of recruiter that you want to work with. But again, it would just depend on your relationship style as well.
Are there any kind of roles from which or up to which recruiter does not get involved? So for example, thinking, is a recruiter or a headhunter relevant contact for all professions? Or if you're in a particular maybe field or profession, or maybe you're too junior, like there's no point because they don't really deal with those junior people. Is that the case, or not necessarily?
It can be, and you'll definitely find that there are people that specialize in permanent roles, in contract roles. Some will specialize in different types of working environments. You definitely do get that, and for the most part, recruiters will work at the mid to senior level, and you will tend to get specialist recruiters that work at the more graduate level. And there might be a niche of roles that they get depending on the level that they're recruiting at. So that might be the case to get you into the right role that you need. If you speak to a large enough recruitment agency, they will be able to pass you on to the right colleague if it's not quite their expertise. But even if they don't, so me, for example, I don't get many intern or junior level roles. It tends to be for the experienced candidates, but I can always point a junior person in the right way. There's always, like, for me, for example, I work with the Research Club, which is a not-for-profit networking organisation. So I'm a brand ambassador there. So if I was working with junior candidates, I might not have a direct role, but I will be able to offer them tickets for networking events. I will be able to introduce them to perhaps some of my senior clients that might be looking for interns. I can point them in the right direction for intern kind of communities that promote and offer partnerships with businesses. Or towards like the right industry trade bodies, and there'll be something that you can offer them for sure. And again, point them in the right direction. So it might not be, I have your dream job for you right now, but it will be, here are some tools and here are some environments that can get you into that hopefully will help you get there.
That's great, because like I didn't know that, for example, you could point people to like even networking events or different communities. That's so useful. I can almost immediately think about all the people who are going through not necessarily even a career change journey, but just they're just looking to change jobs or looking for a job, and they don't have that relationship with any of their recruiters, and they often just ask around saying, I want to go network, I don't know where to go. So they're Googling, and that can be good, but also it can be frustrating because there's so much out there and not everything is relevant. So that's incredible.
For sure. And I would say almost every industry has something, right? In healthcare, you have the Pharma Live. Research, you have the MRS. Like, there is always a group and a community, particularly in London, where we're so lucky, where you can connect, and there will be award ceremonies and shows and all these different things that will be kind of run by one or two big organisations within each profession. And so there's always some kind of way in. And you'll probably find the same in your own profession, where you get to a point where you're in a lot of these conversations, everyone's talking about, how do we get fresh talent in? How do we get people to deliberately choose these careers? How do we make sure that we're getting the right people in, rather than people stumbling in there by accident, or, you know, all these different things. So for the most part, people are quite receptive. So if you help them along and help each other along the way, getting yourself there in the right place at the right time, then for sure, hopefully it will open up opportunities.
That's so insightful, just for me as well. I'm like, wow. Because I had this really, I suppose, silly belief. I just thought like, well, if they're contacting you, they have something specific for you, or several specific options. But I somehow thought if I would contact them, I'd have to pay for the service. No. Almost like I'm not that desperate yet. So many myths about like headhunters.
The number one is
bust.
I guess the number one is that you have to pay us, or that we take a cut from your salary or something like that. If we,
I totally thought that.
Right? That
hands down.
Yes. No, we do not charge you. We do not take a cut from your salary. It is a free service. If anything, our interests are aligned. So a recruiter will always work to get you the most we possibly can on your salary. We charge a client based on what your salary will be normally in the first 12 months, and we charge a percentage back to the client based on that. So the more salary we can get for you, the more we can charge you on your employment.
So you're going to be there fighting for, I want to get the best for you,
get
because
you
it's best for us.
Exactly. And I guess, like, say, the fact that you don't have to be looking for a new role. At the same time, when a recruiter reaches out to you, they have very limited information. They go based on what your profile is. They'll go based on your job title, where it is that you work. Maybe you might have a company profile page. We can get a bit more from that. But we're taking little information and lots of assumptions and putting them together to try and reach out to you about something that we think will be aligned. But until we get on that call and have a conversation or go for that coffee, we don't actually know what it is that you're interested in, what are the key parts of your role, things. I mean, everybody is called a consultant these days. It means so many different things in different organizations. So until we have that conversation, we have very little information that we're working with, and there could be a number of different things that we're working on that could be better aligned or be a better fit. But we've cherry-picked something because it's a one note and it's a one connection, right? So you've cherry-picked something so that you think will kind of be the most targeted. But once you get on a call, you never know what doors it can open and what else they might be working on. Many times I've got on the phone to candidates and they've mentioned a business that they've always been interested in. That'll be a question I always ask. And I'm like, I actually have a really strong relationship there. There isn't a live role, but I can speak to the hiring manager, I can speak to the CEO, or I can speak to HR and see if they would be interested in a conversation. And those are the best ones, because you've not just build a job that you're working on. You've helped match something, you've helped create something, build a role around somebody that's specifically for them, that's aligned with their interests, their goals, and really will help them get to the next stage. And that's something that often happens as well. It's not as rare as people think.
Oh, here's a big one. And I know we already had a really great chat about that. Obviously, when someone is looking to change careers, kind of the job search and the application process is a huge part of their journey. And there's a lot of things that they can run into as perhaps challenges, especially if they're changing careers from, like, jumping from a completely irrelevant field to another field, or they're changing kind of the role. They're making like this kind of 180 or 360, I never know which one, pivot. That usually reflects also in terms of, I suppose, like the credentials and the skills and knowledge and experience that they have. So one of the challenges is that you open up a job ad and you see all this criteria.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's making it quite clear, like, what's absolutely necessary versus what is kind of desirable. And things there can be quite conflicting as well. They might request, like, I don't know, like 10 years of experience, or like these really, really heavy degrees and kind of qualifications that you just don't have. And I think a lot of the times it really scares people.
Yes.
And they just don't apply.
Yes.
And I think I mentioned to you last time, there's that statistic that actually those people are women often, because I think, so the statistics is that if a woman sees that kind of ad with lots of different criteria, she will only, usually, most often, apply if she meets 100% of the criteria. So she will aim towards 100. If she finds something on the list that just not my thing, or I don't know how to do that, she won't get in touch and she won't apply. So what's your take on that? How should people look at ads, and what is true, what's not true, how they should react, and should they apply?
I mean, first of all, they should always apply if it sounds interesting, for sure. And I agree, it tends to be women. We want a lot more information. We want to be a lot more certain about things before we go ahead. We think a lot more about the consequences and the impact before we've even begun any kind of journey or process. I spend a lot of time saying to women, trying to, big them up to their ability and what it is that they're doing, and say, no, I think that you can take this step, and I think you should be ready, and take the plunge. But take a job spec as a wish list. That's all it is. It's a wish list written by a prospective employer or company who is ideally looking for all of these things. And I think everybody knows when you put a wish list together, you're never going to get all of the things that you want. It's an ideal world. But things like academic qualifications, years of experience, they're just used to try and help categorize and box something into a certain level. But I mean, I was saying to you as well, I don't even know if they're legally allowed to put those kinds of things anymore. Just because it can be, right? It can be discriminatory. But when it comes to, unless you're working as like a doctor or a surgeon or in a regulated field like that, you don't need to follow the academic qualifications, especially when it's like, we want a generic degree from a generic university. That's not necessarily relevant. Don't let it put you applying, even if it is, even if they want someone with 3 years experience and you hit everything on that spec, but you've got 5 years experience or 1 year's experience, you don't know how flexible they're willing to be. You don't know what it is that you might bring to that table, what conversations you might be closing yourself off to. So it's always worthwhile applying. Don't let it ever put you off. And if you're looking and you don't have a lot of knowledge or experience and you're looking for a new type of role, look for those job ads first and then work backwards and tailor your CV and your application to match the language of those job specs, because you probably are doing a lot of those things. There are a lot of transferable skills, but you just need to phrase it in the same way they want to hear it.
Yeah,
exactly.
And when you say relevant degree, because yes, I've seen them say relevant. What does relevant even mean?
No idea. Honestly, I don't think it means
because like
anything.
what would you consider relevant versus irrelevant? Because that's one of the things that I think in the past has really scared me, because when it comes to degree, I don't have. Here's a big disclaimer: I don't have. Well, I do have a degree, but my degree is what could be considered an irrelevant degree because it's completely in performing arts, so it's nothing to do with business. It's nothing to do with the field that I even work in right now.
No.
So it's all more kind of built experience. And one of the things that I'm always confused when people say like, well, you know, you must have a relevant degree. I don't know what that means. I'm like, is my degree relevant? I'm not sure. Yeah. Because a lot of times people don't even recognize my degree. They're like, what is this? And I'm like, I swear it is. It's like a postgraduate program. I did like undergrad, postgrad.
Yeah.
But they don't recognize it. They don't know it. It's not even like a university like they maybe even heard of, because it's quite well known in the music industry, but it's not necessarily quite well known anywhere else outside that industry. So is there any way to like gauge what is relevant?
No, and again, I think it's because it doesn't necessarily come from a relevant place. They might, in an ideal world, want a business degree because you're in a business environment, right? But at the same time, you're a teenager when you start your higher education, for the most part. So even to say in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s, 50s plus, oh, what was your relevant degree that you did? Well, I was 18 years old. I don't even remember. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think it's super relevant. I think it's just an ideal and a colloquial ideal that people have just held onto and stuck onto. Unfortunately, you might find that people who go to certain universities or have certain degrees and qualifications, they might get some preferential treatment for that, which can be hard to go up against. But my husband doesn't have a degree. He's worked in finance in the fintech world his entire career. No one's ever turned around and asked him, what degree do you have? He's applied for roles where they say, you know, must have this education from this place. And it's never even been a question. Because he's a man.
Go!
He's
well done.
Yes.
You have a great person to learn from then.
Right?
Just
but
go for it.
You just go for it. If you have the experience, those are your credentials at the end of the day. And I know it can make people feel, it can put someone even in a negative mind space before you've even started a process, because you feel like you're competing against these things. And we just ignore them, pretend they're not there. You know, at the end of the day, your experience will speak for itself. Your personality will speak for itself. People buy into people. They're not going to buy your degree. I don't think anyone's ever asked anyone for their degree.
Sometimes like the job ads, the requirements, or like even the responsibilities, the way that they're described is so heavy. Sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I don't think I can do any of this, because it's described as if like it's like rocket science, and I'm like, I don't think I'm capable of this. They just make it sound so something, and it really like makes you timid and like, I'm not sure I'm good for this. I don't think I can do this, or like if I do get the job, I'll just fail, like I'll be a fraud, because I won't be able to do any of these things.
It's really hard, but I always say to everybody when I send them a job spec, I'm like, take it with a pinch of salt. Please take it with a pinch of salt. That's the best advice I could give, whether it's the salary range that's on there, the years of experience, the academic requirements, all of those things, take it with a pinch of salt. It's always going to have a wish list of 101 things they want you to be able to do. But part of what you can do when going into a role and having these conversations is to just understand the expectations. Don't be afraid to ask difficult questions once you are through that door, because if they can't answer the difficult questions from the get-go, that kind of also tells you what you need to know. And if they are able to reassure you and put you at ease and really simplify things and boil them down, then again, that should be a green flag for you. And be like, okay, cool, this is the type of environment where you can learn, where things, you know, do you know what I mean? It kind of explains itself in that way. I guess people just don't pick up on those red flags. Or you learn once you've had a bad experience. Once someone's had one bad experience, then like, I absolutely know what I'm going to do and not do. But at the end of the day, for the most part, a hiring manager or the person doing your day-to-day job has not written that job description. It's been written by a HR person, maybe a recruiter like myself. You know, it's not necessarily written by the hiring manager or the person who is doing that day-to-day role, so they're going to always be the best people to speak to. When you are going through an interview process, never be afraid to ask to speak to the right people as well. You might get put in formal interviews with HR or with senior leadership, but ask to speak to a peer. Ask to have that conversation, and you can ask them those questions. Okay, what is it really like? What's the culture like? How do you deal with X, Y, Z? Stuff that maybe those senior people can't always relate to.
How early in the process can you do that?
I'd say wherever you feel comfortable after you've had your first initial conversation. Whether that's letting your recruiter or other HR person know, at some point it would be nice, you know, to have that conversation with whoever it is that you need, or after you've had that formal first stage with personnel or with hiring managers. You can even keep it in your back pocket for when you have an offer. It just depends on how arduous an interview process is for you, or how many questions you might have, or how unsure you might be. If an employee has moved through a process really quickly, and you're like, oh, okay, this has been a lot, and they've made you a job offer, maybe then at that point you can say it would be nice
I'd like to speak to someone,
and meet them, and I have a few questions and things like that, and you can do it that way, and people do it all the time. It's very common. It helps a lot into reassuring you, showing commitment on both sides, things like that. So it tends to be a positive thing. People don't see it as a negative thing.
Yeah, so you can't really skew your chances just because they're quite demanding.
No, not at all. If anything, they'll probably be quite excited to think, oh, okay, you're quite interested, you're quite keen, you really want to learn, you really want to meet people. So yeah, and it helps your chances too, because you're slowly building connections within the organisation already. Yeah.
You mentioned red flags. I'm going to pick up on that.
Okay.
What are the red flags? Are there any that you can think of? And it's okay if not, but are there any red flags?
Inflexibility. I just think if you go into a process scared to ask certain questions, or working with employees that are not flexible, then that's a big red flag. One of the most common things I get now is working with parents, male parents, female parents, working with parents who are like, oh, I work a 4-day week, and I'd ideally like to keep that. And I'm like, no, not ideally. If that's something that you would like to keep, then let me know. And most employers, that's a super normal, flexible thing to be able to do, and for you to trust a mature adult person that you're going to be doing your job. But if somebody's hesitant about that from the get-go, that's a red flag. Just don't pursue it further, because if you start sacrificing very early on in a process to try and fit an expectation for a business, what are you going to do in real life when life actually hits, and we're all human at the end of the day, and your employees are not being flexible because your child is sick, or because you weren't supposed to be working on a certain day, and you know, things like that. Yeah. So I would say that's a big red flag.
Does that reflect on the company, or could there be an instance where a company just doesn't do part-time contracts?
Yeah, I would say it doesn't always reflect badly. Some businesses just have different business models and cultures.
Okay, so it's not necessarily like it just may not be the right fit for you.
It's just not going to be the right
fit
for you.
That's in those terms, like red flag.
Absolutely.
Because some of the other ones I've heard is like when they say we're like a family here.
I've heard that a lot. I've heard that a lot. I prefer community. Yeah. A few people have said it to me, actually. A few people have said it to me. They're like, when a culture is so strong, it's not a culture or a family, it's a cult. Yeah.
That's so true.
Which is fine. Some people love it, and there's something for everyone.
Yeah.
I think in the post-COVID world, there is so much range. There are so much range and opportunities and types of working environments that don't let yourself get disheartened. Don't feel obliged to take the first thing that comes your way, because there will be a fit somewhere. And we're lucky now. We have a lot of choices. If you want to work compressed working weeks, shorter working days, there's all kinds of different things. If you want to come into the office 1 day a week, 4 days a week, there are lots of different types of environments that can facilitate. And so if you know what it is that you want and need, that is going to help you be the most successful professional you can be, then don't compromise on those things. And if you get a lot of pushback early on, then I would just kind of take that into consideration.